What? That's right. It's time for another machine dig at Haunted Ridge with the crystal collector, Brian Major. The first weekend in November, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, the 3rd, 4th, and 5th. Come on down to Haunted Ridge and meet Brian, me, and who knows what other YouTubers might be there. Only $35 a bucket for this amazing material. You can find tons of crystals and agate. Let's talk about them. That's right. This November, the first weekend in November, there's going to be a dig at Haunted Ridge with Brian Major, the crystal collector. What can you find at Haunted Ridge and how did it form? Let's check it out. So these are some of my favorite pieces from Haunted Ridge that I've collected over the past few years. Let's start with a couple that aren't from Haunted Ridge. This one. This is just from fill gravel, or riprap rock in Washington County. And you can see how the quartz forms in the dolomite here. It forms inside the dolomite, and then this dolomite dissolves. And at Haunted Ridge, we find these pieces dissolved out of the dolomite like this. So how did all of this form? Well, this is a good piece to show that off. You can see it's just like a flat seam. We have two different kinds of crystals in here. What's going on here is this was a layer, most likely between layers of fossil stromatolite, and it was flat in the dirt like this, and the crystals came in and filled these layers in the fossil stromatolite. So everything that you see here on this table is basically something that represents a different type of pocket like this, or like this. This was its own type of pocket, this was its own type of pocket, this, and so on. And what you find at Haunted Ridge is just large sections of these that have broken up and then are just in the clay and the top layers of soil. Sometimes you can find pieces that are kind of sort of still together how they were when they were in the ground. This one that I found that was like that. And lots of the stromatolites there had little finger-like projections that came up and left these types of patterns. This is like a mold that formed around one of the stromatolite fossils, almost like a fossil of a fossil. And you'll see that sort of structure in a lot of the pieces there. Here's a big one. You can see that it was a stromatolite fossil that had those tubes. And if we look on the back side, no crystals, lots of roly-poly bugs. But this is more what the stromatolite fossil looked like. And you can kind of see how it formed, and then later the quartz filled the fossil in. Most of these formed inside fossil stromatolite, but not all. This piece has impressions of dolomite crystals on the backside, so I think that just formed in a regular bug. So what about this brown stuff here, you ask? That's not quartz crystals. No, it's not. It's limonite or goethite crystals after marcasite. Originally, it would have been something kind of greenish gold like this. This is a piece from a different location, from a quarry that came from deep down in the bedrock below the water table. So the crystals have not oxidized and are still golden and sparkly. So that's what this stuff is. You'll find a lot of that at Haunted Ridge. Unfortunately, we have to dig into the bedrock below the water table to find anything like this. This one's got a sphalerite on it too. That's a super cool one, but did not come from Haunted Ridge. But that's what this brown stuff is. So they're not as sparkly as the quartz crystals, but some of these limonite after marcasite formations are pretty cool. Don't count them out. And one of the other minerals that you may find at Haunted Ridge, besides a crystal quartz wiener and limonite or goethite after marcasite, is this white mineral here. This is barite, and this is commonly what it looks like at Haunted Ridge. There's not really a lot of it. Occasionally there'll just be layers of it on the crystals like this. Sometimes it's not particularly attractive, and there's no real good way to get that off unless you were to chip it off. But I kept this piece, as you can see, because it had some broken crystals on top. I thought that was really cool. And of course, this has cool agate banding on the back. Most of these pieces do. Here's a piece that I found that I cut and polished this side. You can see we have crystals here on this side, and then this side reveals the lace agate banding. Each change in the layer of banding is a change in the conditions when the crystals were growing. Here's a slab that we did. This isn't even wet. Shout out Kurt Westerman, Rock Hounding Adventures. That's a piece that he polished for me. Found that one of the first times I went out there. Here is a tower of sorts that I'm working on. This is just another random piece that I collected at Haunted Ridge. You can find tons of this stuff. It's not all just crystals, although I am pretty partial to these crystals. I really like this one. This is one of the first pieces that my wife Ashley found when we went there. Found this one while we were digging with Brian Major, actually. And what is this stuff? That is a layer of chalcedony. I don't know if it's showing up on camera, but it sparkles a tiny bit. It has a layer of microcrystals and has some really neat formations on there. And here's a smaller piece. I like this one because when it broke, when it was forming, I guess, we got this awesome rehealed section, and it just contrasts so well with the chalcedony coated crystals. And again, you can see the agate banding on the backside. This is another broken piece that I really like. Found this at one of the first digs with Brian Major and his nephew Dylan. Hooked me up with this piece. Look at that. So it broke while it was forming in the pocket. We had some chalcedony coated crystals, and then that exposed these clear crystals underneath. That is just such a wild piece. And you can see the zoning in there as the crystals were forming. Really, really unique formation. I like that one. So just because it's broken doesn't mean, it needs to be fixed. That's pretty cool. So let's talk about this piece. This is one of my favorite pieces that I found. It's got rehealed agate banding exposed on this side, and then you can see how, well, I guess that one's rehealed too, but somewhere here on this side you can see where it just broke. Really awesome smoky phantom tips in the crystals there. And if I were to soak it and iron out, that's what this one would look like, I'm pretty sure. I found it right next to where I found this one, and you can see this one has a little bit of the barite on it. I've been nervous to soak this one because I kind of like the color. So most of these, when you pull them out, won't look like this. They'll look like this and have the orange staining. This one here is another one that had a lot of the orange staining, but you can take all of that off by soaking it in iron out, or your acid of choice that you want to soak it in. So this is what you're looking for. You have to really have a sharp eye and be willing to put in some work cleaning, because they don't just come out of the ground looking like this. You got to work for it. Occasionally, you'll even find what I like to call crystal balls. I guess this is like a piece of dolomite or limestone that was in the ground, and then the quartz formed all around it. This one has some nice limonite after marcasite on it also. And then the rock that these crystals formed around just completely dissolved away. It's totally hollow in there. That's some wild stuff. So there's lots of variation to the color of these crystals. You have everything from kind of dark citrine, root beer colored, which don't forget about the backside. There's usually always agate banding on these. Sometimes not so much though. This is about as large as the crystals at Haunted Ridge get. If you find any bigger, let me know. I want to see them. There's lots of different color variations to the crystals. You have some that kind of have these smoky tips. Others almost have a pink color to them. I think this one's super cool. And yeah, some cool agate banding on the back side of that piece. So everything from funky botryoidals to chalcedony covered crystals to big plates of seam agate, interesting stromatolite fossils, limonite and goethite after marcasite. Really interesting formations of all kinds here. There are some that I like to call cinnamon and sugar, where a bunch of crystals broke in the pocket. This one is covered in, I think, barite crystals and maybe tiny little bits of quartz that glued all these broken pieces on top. Sometimes you can find what I call nubbin formations. These are some of my favorites. Aside from the obvious silly jokes that you could make, these are really cool looking. And of course, the large plates of crystals. Whether they're root beer, champagne, strawberry, purple chalcedony, or whatever names you want to make up for them, they are beautiful. And one that I'm not particularly proud of, but just to show you, sometimes you pull things out of the ground muddy. I could tell it had crystals and thought it might be cool. It's just covered with a really cruddy layer of limonite that's not going to come off. So not every single piece that you bring home in your bucket will be a winner, but I think the pieces that are make up for it. And my foot next to it for scale. Some of these crystals get quite big. This is a root beer cluster that Cash found that he wanted me to show off. And you can tell this stromatolite one here, another huge rock. But I'm going to show you the biggest one I have. So this is my biggest one right here. Let's check this beast out. So this is my largest piece here. It's the chalcedony covered micro druzy crystals. This needs some cleaning. It's got lichens and stuff growing on it. Someday I would like to polish some of this agate in here. So you can find some big rocks at Haunted Ridge. They get quite big. So I will see you November 3rd, 4th, or 5th out at Haunted Ridge, along with Brian Major, the crystal collector. It's only $35 a bucket to collect this material. They're gonna have food vendors. There's gonna be lots of people there, opportunities to probably meet other YouTubers. I'm not sure who all's gonna be there, but it's gonna be a great time. Come on out. So a brief explanation of what can be found and some of how the formations formed at Haunted Ridge. The main thing is you want to come on out because it's going to be awesome and you're going to find tons of cool stuff, lots of great people. They drive you around to dig sites and there will be catering on site. It's going to be a great time. See you there, everybody. Rock on.